Parents often ask me if there is such a thing as sensory reintegration disorder, and does their child have sensory reintegration disorder? Well, it's an interesting issue that is not discussed in the scientific community, but discussed a lot on the internet. So people assume that sensory reintegration disorder really exists. But when the World Health Organization and the American Psychiatric Association explored the concept of sensory reintegration disorder, they came to the conclusion that there was not enough data to substantiate that it is a real diagnosis. So here's science, here's opinion, and many of the things you see on the internet are only based on opinion, even though they're widely publicized by many people. So the question, is sensory reintegration disorder a thing, is no. The issue is we have 5 senses, not 7 senses. We have 5 senses because we have cranial nerves that control those 5 senses. We don't have cranial nerves to control 7 senses that some people on the internet will talk about, claiming that we have 7 senses instead of 5. No, rather we have the ability to see, we have the ability to hear, we have the ability to smell, the ability to taste, and the ability to use our hands to touch. So if we take the classic example of some parent who's worried about their child having a sensory reintegration disorder because they put their fingers in their ears every time they hear music, this is not a sign of sensory reintegration disorder. Something has happened in the child's life that has reinforced the child deciding to do this in order to not hear the music. So, does that mean the child can't hear? No. So what is it that might be stimulating the child's action of wanting to say, oh, that's too noisy, I don't like it? It could simply be that of the child's 5 senses, their sense of hearing is more acute, more highly tuned than their other 5 senses, their other 4 senses. And that is true for all of us. For example, some of us have a very, very acute sense of taste. For me, many things taste the same. It's not a big deal to me if I eat hummus at one restaurant or hummus at a different restaurant. It tastes about the same to me. But there are many people who will say, oh, the taste of café at one restaurant is better than the taste of café in another restaurant. I don't notice that, but I definitely notice when people are shouting loud, and it annoys me. I don't like loud noises. So my sense of hearing is more acute than my sense of taste. Now another example is my sense of smell. I notice odors or fragrances that many other people don't notice because for whatever reason, Allah made it this way. That particular sense happens to be more acute in my brain. So that first cranial nerve, the one that controls our sense of smell, happens to be very acute in my brain. But that doesn't mean I have a sensory reintegration disorder. No, it just means some of our senses are more intent than other senses. Example, 80% of the human population are predominantly visual learners. For the percentage of us that are not predominantly visual learners, then we don't remember what we wore yesterday or what someone else wore yesterday because it didn't seem to be an important thing to remember. So when you hear people talking about sensory disorders, the real term is sensory reintegration disorder. However, it is not an official medical diagnosis. Subsequently, until there is enough data to substantiate that it does exist, we have to follow the research and acknowledge that, no, we all have 5 senses, and some of us have more acute listening, some of us have more acute vision, some of us have more acute sense of smell, some of us have more acute sense of taste, and some of us just love to touch everything because we're tactile kinesthetic. So with that in mind, there is no specific diagnostic criteria that's called sensory reintegration disorder that has been approved internationally by the World Health Organization and the American Psychiatric Association that is in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Thank you for listening.
خذ نشاط لشوف هذا النشاط. خذ هذا النشاط.
لا
بلا هذا النشاط بدنا ناخده. هذا أنا بدي أشتغل بهذا النشاط.
لا
أنا رح أختار نشاط. أنا اخترت نشاط الأشكال.